Hello, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Grantmakers Curtain, What Funders Want with Matt Hugg. This workshop is being recorded and slides will be shared afterwards, so keep your eyes peeled for a follow-up email later in case you would like anything to review from today. In case it's the first time that you've been here, this is a free grant workshop that is brought to you by Instrumentl. These partner workshops are collaborations with community educators such as Matt, as we try to tackle some sort of problem that grant seekers are looking for when it comes to applying, tracking, or managing their grants. Instrumentl is the institutional fundraising platform. If you ever want to bring your grant prospecting, tracking, and management into one place, we can help you do that. And you can set up your own personalized grant recommendations using the link on the screen here, instrumentl.com/NPC. Lastly, be sure to stick around to the end of today's presentation. Matt has a few raffle prizes to give away, roughly worth about $300 in total for 3 different winners. And so we'll announce more details to that at the end of the presentation. Now, with that housekeeping out of the way, I'm very excited to bring Matt onto the stage. Matt Hugg is an educator, e-learning specialist, online trainer, and CEO of Nonprofit Courses, which is your on-demand online educational resource for nonprofit leaders, staff, board members, and volunteers. In fact, if you ever want to, during this presentation, take your phone up to that QR code and visit the site, you can feel free to do so in the background of Matt there. We ask that if you have any questions, you can go ahead and use 2 hashtags in front of your question. That way it's easier to draw it out from the chat. Otherwise, Matt, go ahead and take it away.
All right, thank you. And I got to say, Will, from the start here, that it is hugely attractive to me to have all information in one place on any topic. So the fact that Instrumentl does that is a major advantage in my eyes. I can't imagine working with multiple databases or places to find things just doesn't work for me personally. Thank you very much for having me here. By the way, yeah, you're a little, let's see, we'll move here. And yeah, I want to talk about what's, behind the Grantmakers curtain, right? And it's very important to, I think, learn life from the Grantmakers point of view, as opposed to our point of view. I teach a couple of classes in grant proposal writing. I teach one at Thomas Edison State University in New Jersey, which is online, by the way. And that's one of the themes we really get into, is talking about what life looks like from the other side, because it's not until you can put yourself in somebody else's shoes that you can really start working with them and doing what they want to do, which is they want to work with you. So let's get ourselves started here. What are we going to be talking about today? We are going to talk about how we see grant makers. That is a big thing. How you and I, anybody who is working in grant proposal writing sees the grant makers makes a major difference in how they work with us and how we work with them. The program you pick is obviously important, right, to you, but it also is important to them. And we're going to talk about how that impacts things. Your budget, it's not just the numbers, it's, or as our mothers would tell us, it's not what you say, but how you say it. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Dances with your finances. And this is about the big picture of your organization and how that impacts the process here. The fact that, sometimes grant proposal writers are just plain tapped out. They don't have money. How do you respond to that? Can you see your future? Putting that context in things, writing it right. There are a lot of important things about writing, right? After all, it's called grant writing, although we want to put that in perspective. We want to talk about their rules and how their rules impact what you do, and then connecting correctly. What is the way that you want to connect with grant funders and how that's going to impact your success rate. So all of this, of course, is so you can avoid a lot of common mistakes. They're just, it's not that there's so many of them, but I think it's just that we get into a routine that it's easy to miss them. So we're going to talk about some basics. We're going to talk about some not so basics, and to get your proposal out there the best way it should look. And then to be better equipped for knowing what to ask of funders. Funders want to help. We're going to talk a lot about that. And then, of course, how Instrumentl is going to save you some time and money, identifying the right opportunities and helping organize your information, which, like I said from the top, is huge. So let's get started. And of course, I'm going to put on my Professor Matt hat on here to start. And I want to ask you, what's the #1 complaint that grant makers have about applicants? You know, like, is it they can't write a good budget? Budgets are important, right? That some people consider that the core. Yep. And there's a pop quiz coming up here about this. They treat us like ATMs. That's a really huge thing that happens in grant proposal writing. You know, well, you just turn in the paper and they give us money, right? Ka-ching, it's like an ATM. They never invite us to their parties. Have you ever invited a grant maker to to one of your events or parties? I mean, you know, maybe that's a big complaint. Or they don't read the guidelines. You know, I mean, who reads these things, right? Let's just get the proposal out there. Well, what do you think? Click in there and then let's talk about that. Will, what do you got here? Give them a couple seconds.
Yeah, we'll give it a couple more seconds. So we're at 70% of respondents. So I'll give it a few more seconds and then I'll share the responses for you.
Sounds good. Yeah, these are all really important, right? Especially that party thing. Boy, you want to make sure that, you know, you get them to where to all your events.
And there you go. There are the results.
Okay. And boy, this is a really bright crowd because, yeah, they don't read the guidelines. What, nobody picked parties? Come on. Yeah, that's not really the big complaint. So let's move ahead here and say, what do you know, how do you see grant makers makes a big difference? Of course, it seems like they hold all the power. It seems like, you know, they're the ones who control your future. But, you know, sometimes they're just stuck. They have a board. They have people to be responsible to as well. And so let's talk about a little bit of this. Well, first of all, and like we said in the quiz here, right? And it's funny, we kind of joke about this. I'm not an ATM. And a few people actually put that, and that's actually a concern. A lot of organizations treat grant funders like their ATMs. You know, put in a proposal, get back the money, just like putting your card in the ATM. Yeah, that's not how they see themselves. And I hear that sometimes from grant funders, is that that's a problem. But really a bigger problem is the second one, that they're not the god or goddess. It's just amazing how folks get nervous, and it's understandable too. Here comes the proposal, you know, the funder, what do we say? What do we do? And you know, you can kind of see the sweat in them, right? But they're people. They like to be treated like people. You obviously have to treat them with respect, but it's not like, you know, this is a Hollywood star. I'd say you treat those people like people too, right? One of the things I've learned in my fundraising career over time is that people like to be treated like people. And so for funders, that's really important, because sometimes that leads to this third point, which is that folks will hide things from them. And because either they're nervous about it, they don't know how they're going to react, they want to put out their best foot, right? Whatever it is, right? And that's huge. They don't want people to hide stuff from them when it comes to proposals or programs or other things going on in your organization. Now, that doesn't mean you have to air your dirty laundry, right? But it just means that there are key points that you don't want to hide. Now, and I will also say that obviously this is a much more important point today than it ever was before, because it's so easy to get information. Years gone by, I remember when we had somebody on, we were dealing with a company that happened to own another company that was, I think, a tobacco company. And we had somebody on our board who was working for an organization that was anti-tobacco. And we did our best to obfuscate that a bit. That was not probably the right thing to do, but today there's just no way you could do that because names are out there. People are going to see it. Help me help you. So many organizations want to, funders see themselves as partners. They want to help you. And I have heard directly from funders who say, my job is to help that grantee be successful. They want to apply their skill and knowledge, because remember, just like if you're a development officer, one of the things that I found going out, especially when I worked for College of Engineering, was I would see all sorts of businesses. In fact, all sorts of businesses, even in one sector, like microelectronics or something. And I was able to have discussions with them. And obviously I wasn't making suggestions about manufacturing or anything, but I could make comparisons between them and bring in like information in my head to these people. Well, it's the same thing. They are seeing a variety of kinds of nonprofits. So if they see something in one place, they might say, hey, have you tried this? Not because you're doing something wrong, it's because they've had the advantage of being that bee who goes flower to flower, pollinating everything. And they know what's going on in one flower, and now they want to bring it to your flower. So take advantage of that. Next, it is a stressful job. Yeah, how many times have any of us said, oh, boy, I'd love to give away money, right? Yeah, don't, be careful what you wish for. This is a very stressful job, mostly because, they don't have enough. It doesn't matter how much they don't have enough to really do what they want to do. So they have to be selective. They also have to cut through a lot of obfuscation that comes from some of these other points here, like people treating them like a god or a goddess, or hiding things from them or whatever. This is not an easy job. Appreciate that. Help make their lives easier. Really important point. And while it's stressful, one of the biggest stresses they face is trying to minimize the risk to their organization while accomplishing their goals. Because even if you have a great reputation, even if you have worked with them before, they are putting their mission in your hands. That's risky. It doesn't matter, what the conditions are. So they really want to minimize those risks, and that plays big in their decision-making process. If you might even have a very risky program, that's okay. If your organization is stable, then that is minimizing the risk. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. They only have so much time. We're all pressed with that, right? This is one of the big complaints I see from funders is they get all these proposals from things that have nothing to do with what they do. That really hurts their time. So they're very time aware. Make sure you respect that. And of course, don't think that you're dealing with free agents here. They have a boss. Almost anybody you deal with in a foundation or a company, a corporate foundation or something, has a boss that they have to satisfy that they're doing the right things. So back to making their job easier, right? Make their job easier by helping them make a good case to the people to which they have to present your proposal and make a good case. That's really huge. So how might they turn you down, right? Well, they might not have confidence that you can pull off what you're saying you can do, right? You might look good, on paper, right? But they're looking at other things like your background information, your 990s, other material, and saying, yeah, are these people big enough, or are they doing what they should be doing to be able to pull off this program? Do they have the right people in place, right? That Jim Collins, right? Good to great, got to have the right people on the bus. Do they have those folks there? So that's going to be something that I might question. Maybe you don't communicate well. And going down a couple of bullet points, or you don't respond to their communications. I will tell you that if you're putting in an application to somebody, make sure you whitelist their email address. Make sure that you put their name in your contacts on your phone. Make sure that you respond to whatever they get in a timely manner. That's huge. And if you aren't communicating well, or you miss something, saying, oh, that email went to spam, not a good excuse. Make sure that it goes to your inbox where it should go, because that can make the difference there. Yeah, the attitude is off-putting. That's a really big thing. You'd be surprised how much this is a problem. That of course not you, but a lot of the other people, right, are kind of expecting, oh, well, they have to give money. They it's a foundation, they have to give money, so they should give it to us, and take almost the opposite of that, God goddess attitude, and take the other end of the spectrum, which is that they're arrogant about being a recipient. Yeah, don't do that. That's not good. And you may not even think you're doing it. You may not even know you're doing it. So give yourself a gut check with somebody else so that you're coming across respectful, but not arrogant that way. And one of the ways that you kind of come off arrogant, which unfortunately occurs, is that you send a proposal that is not within their mission guidelines, because you have some idea, or for good or not, that they somehow would have an interest in something that is not stated there. Now, maybe you've had communication with them and that's appropriate, that's fine, but don't make those assumptions, because and the problem with putting in a bad proposal isn't that they're just going to turn you down now, but that, these folks keep lists, they have memories, and they'll see. Keep in mind that foundations and corporate donors have software just like your, gift processing software. They have software that is going to help them remember things too. So now let's see, we have a question here. What do you do when a funder just doesn't respond to an LOI? Won't even give you a decision-making timetable. Yeah, that probably comes back to either one of their, they're busy, or maybe they have a tradition of not responding to things. That's okay. We'll talk about how to connect to folks later on. And so that might be good to take up at that point. But I really like the question, because don't take it like that they're bad folks, or that somehow your proposal may not be within what they're doing. It just could be a busy thing. All right, what you can do, help them help you, right? Expect a relationship and treat them respectfully. Don't be nervous. Again, talk to them, have conversations. If it's appropriate to call them, call them. We'll talk a little bit about that later. We talked about never thinking they had to fund you, right? That becomes an issue. Clearly communicate, and if in doubt, ask. So you might, that LOI question, maybe you get somebody, an assistant on the phone, right? And say, hey, I sent something in. I just want to make sure it got there. And I, in case there's something else I need to do, I just want to touch base. That's okay. A lot of times they'll appreciate that, because for some reason it got shunted off in an area. Maybe it went to their spam file, or maybe there's some glitch in their software or something. So communication, but at the appropriate level, like that's something that an assistant in an office could handle, so that you're not kind of shooting yourself in the foot with the big people, you might say. But remember, in offices, especially small offices, they will have a lot of influence as well. Let's see. When there's a wall and no one you can communicate with. Yeah, we'll talk again about communication later on, but that can be a problem. And sometimes it's just like, you're putting it in, and that's okay. It might be their mode of operations is only to return communication with people that they feel like they can work with. It could be a soft no. I mean, think of this a lot of times like a job application process. How many times, if you've been in a job search lately, or even not so lately, you send out a resume, you don't hear anything? Most times when I speak to employers about that, they're like, I just get so many, I don't have time to get back to folks. It's not like they're thinking ill of you. You don't fit in their guidelines, and they're just moving on. So keep that in mind. Let's see here. Funder had a previous impression of you, right? Okay, so and financial risk. That's good, Paula. Thank you. That's a very good comment. So let's move to our next slide here. Your program pick. This is really critical, because it's all about matching, right? And I think you probably know this, that it's all about Venn diagrams and coming together, and your circle overlapping their circle as much as possible. So, right, they're asking themselves, does this program meet our goals? Is this, where we need to be? It's really important to remember that they see you as a means of meeting their mission. Your mission is nice, but it's not why they're there. You are carrying out their mission forward. So this is I always have this image in my mind about the Monty Python film Holy Grail, and the knight, who loses limbs, and he's there. He's arrogant, right? Well, this is your funder, right? They don't have the arms and legs to carry out their mission. They're looking for you to carry out that mission. So think about, they're asking, do you, as your nonprofit, meet their goals? Now, what's the impact? Impact is huge. Of course, like you, they want to make an impact on the world. They want to be out there and doing the best they can for the people that they are hoping to serve, whether that's a particular community or a group that has a certain problem or whatever that is. So you're being able to show them that impact by the choice of kind of program and the way you're carrying out is a major issue for them. So they're asking, do these people know what they're doing? Okay, something I always bring up in my classes, I think it's really important. You don't want to be well-intended. Hear that. You don't want to be well-intended. You must be expert. Whatever you're doing, you don't want to come off as well-intended do-gooders. It's great. We all have that, right? But you want to be experts. So your job, right? Because as a grant proposal writer, you are a translator between whatever it is that you do and the public and the people who fund you. So you need to be able to come off with a level of expertise that says, hey, we know what we're doing. We've studied this problem. We have a solution that meets either historical best practices, or because you know what's been going on, because you're expert, you can propose something that's cutting edge. So it's, knowing what you're doing is huge, and being able to express what you're doing is a big part of that. Is the program too big for them? That's, they're asking, well, what you're proposing, is this, can you pull it off? Is it too big? That's a really important question for them to ask. How can, this next one is really huge. How can you tell whether it's successful or not? Remember, if you haven't heard the word logic model, and I imagine everybody on this call has, remember that it's not output that's important, it's outcomes. What are the outcomes going to be? So it's not how many kids you have in seats in the classroom, it's what are they getting out of whatever program, education that they're getting. What are the outcomes? Are they going to be, going on to lift themselves out of a certain neighborhood? Are they going to be able to make an impact on the world, and living in different places? Whatever it is, right? Outcomes is it. That's what is important to the funder. So being able to show potential successful outcomes is really important. Are they open to suggestions? They could read your proposal and say, oh, well, I wonder if they do this, right? And if they're starting to make suggestions, something else to consider is that you have in fact hooked them, because they are engaged with your proposal. And even if you don't get funded in that round, you've gotten their brains going that, hey, this organization is good. If we can make these changes or something, this might work. Because remember, they see other organizations do things like you might do. And again, will they communicate progress, right? So you want to be able to put checkpoints in to say, these are the places that we are moving forward. And I see that left out of a lot of proposals where people just say, well, we're going to do this, right? But actually program your communication in so that I tell my students, there are no ta-da moments in this business. You don't want to turn around and say, ta-da, it's done, right? Right? You want to be able to show progress along the way. Now, Natalie said, don't necessarily agree with the outputs versus outcomes theory. So many funders say our cost per student is too high. I can't speak to that specifically, right? But I know that if you tell them, this is kind of the difference between what is it? Salespeople will say people buy things emotionally and then justify them logically, right? Outcomes is in some respects the emotional buying of what you're proposing to do. Outputs are the logical, sometimes the logical numbers. Now, outcomes can also have numbers, but you want to talk about impact. At least that's been my experience. Okay, so they might turn you down because the proposed program isn't a priority for them this year. That's hard to judge, I know, because so many times our information is behind. Now, of course, tools the Instrumentl has can help with that a lot. But I know from my own experience that sometimes you're what do they say, like driving while looking in the rearview mirror, and so you may not know the latest. That's why networking with your friends and connecting with them on what is a particular organization's interest area is really important. All the time, I get these people aren't in our geographic area. I hear that a lot from folks, from funders, and that's just a matter of reading and believing their guidelines. Is that geography is really important to so many foundations because they were founded by people who live in a community and they want to help their community. I more and more are seeing that proposals are highly partisan, or at least perceived that way. You want to know where they are on that scale, if it's appropriate to connect, and or at least be neutral and saying, you're just doing. And partisan, by the way, doesn't necessarily mean political. It might mean religious. It might have other implications too. But if you're serving a community of people who need help, obviously you can't change who you are as an organization, but just know that that might be part of the analysis is, do you fit with them in those other ways? Or maybe you just said, you didn't demonstrate the benefit of the proposed program to them, which means that for some reason they don't see the mission connection. They don't see the hook between what your organization does and what they do. So keep that in mind. So what do, right? Real easy. And this is where Instrumentl can be a major help, right? Because they help you provide materials, network contacts. They don't provide the contacts, but you're able to know who those possibly are. All the background data of these points, Instrumentl can be a big help with, which is you gotta read what they're giving you. You have to do your background research. What our parents, again, back to motherisms, right? What's well started is well done. And the more background research you do, the more prepared you can be to put out a great proposal. And that means understanding your prospect, just like major gift work, dealing with an individual, except in this case, you actually might have a little bit of a head start because some of these things are a little more plainly put out. So yeah, use the sources that are available to talk to other grant recipients, network that way with folks. My experience is that people are really good about talking to other fellow development, grant proposal writer professionals about particular folks that they have already received money from. Keep that in mind, right? Because of course there's always going to be a little bit of competition, right? But the folks are pretty collegial this way. And then get to know in your network and their network where the crossovers are. And honestly, tools like LinkedIn can be really helpful this way. People in the funders network have secondary contacts. You have secondary contacts. Where do they cross over? And start engaging some of that a little bit. Okay, pop quiz. Back to teacher Matt here, right? Proposal budget is an informal guideline on how you could spend their money, absolute hard and fast plan on how you'll spend their money, a living document that will be reviewed as you get to the realities of the program, or serving suggestions like you see in a cereal box. I don't know if anybody's ever noticed, but those little If you see a picture on the cereal box or any other food product, say these little asterisk serving suggestion, like you could have your Cheerios look like this. Well, is that what a budget is? Is it, you could have your Cheerios look like this? Is it an informal guideline? Is it a living document? Is it hard and fast? What do you think? Where are you on this?
So this is a multi-select question, folks. So if you do want to select more than one, you can select more than one in the selections.
There you go.
Awesome.
So the organization that Susie works with intentionally brought in more money than they spent last year. Well, that's a good thing, right? That's called having a reserve. Congratulations. They want to build reserves, keep money for emergencies, capital needs, right? Does a funder understand this, or will they assume we don't need the money? No, a good sophisticated funder, which honestly I think most are, will get that totally. Let's come back to that in a second here. Yes, informal guideline, no. Serving suggestion, oh, thank you, somebody, for picking that. Yeah, the answer is either 2 or 3. So, and it really depends on the organization. Some are absolute hard and fast. This is how you will spend their money. And others will take it as a living document. I personally think the better ones will take it as a living document, as long as you keep that communication up and say, hey, this didn't happen. I've had this happen where we were putting on a series of shows, and the last show just wasn't going to happen between booking the people off a particular list they had, or and then the venue availability, and it was an outside venue, and so we had rain problems and all that. And at the end, they said, you know what? Just put on a show sometime and we'll just wrap this up. They're really good about that. So, a lot of good questions coming up here. Does a funder understand? Yeah, because most funders, when it comes to their business, they've made money, right? They understand that a healthy nonprofit isn't just living by the myth that there is no profit or surplus in nonprofits, that they need to have that cushion. So I hope that you're dealing with somebody who actually understands that. What qualifies them to understand social need and impact? Honestly, nothing does, unless you're dealing with a very sophisticated foundation that has program officers that focus on a particular kind of area. So as I say, I'll tell you people that writing something for an intelligent layperson is really where you need to go, unless you have proof that they are an expert in a particular area. Like if you're working in child development and you know that you're dealing with somebody who deals in child development, then yeah, geek out, show that you're really an expert in this. But and you always should show you're an expert. But if you are dealing with typically intelligent lay people, then you need to be able to make the case that why what you're doing is important. Who are the people creating applications or reading proposals? It could be anybody. Nothing stops anybody from making a foundation. All it takes is the money to do it. And so they may not have experience. And like I said, how can we learn more about writing to audience to whom we are writing? That comes down to doing your background research. That comes down to who's on the board, what are their backgrounds, who are the people on the, go dig into the 990s, find out who's running the organization. If you can find it, go on LinkedIn and see who's working for them and who might be reviewing your application and learning about their backgrounds, right? It's all about research. And you bring up some good questions here. There really isn't, there's no funder certification program for particular areas, for better or for worse. So you have to do your best on identifying who they are and writing to what you believe is their level of expertise. Okay, can they judge it from the budget, right? Yeah, budgets are really important. It's more than just a list of expenses. People will say, show me your budget and I'll tell you your priorities, right? Well, it's kind of the same thing here. So they're going to ask themselves, is the budget enough? Right? Are they asking for enough money? One of the big mistakes I see that people make, and if you've been in this for a bit, you probably have gotten beyond this, but it's, they're asking for more, they're discounting themselves out, right? So they're saying, hey, if we just ask for a little less, then we won't, then they'll buy us instead of buying that other thing. No, you've got to be honest with your expenses. That's really important. And they can tell if you're not. They know what it costs for things, largely. And being detailed enough is important. You want to be able to put out the right numbers to say that, yeah, this is what this costs to do. You've done your background research. You can justify whatever that line item is. Are the right elements in the budget for a successful program? That's really important, right? Because you want to be able to tie program activities to budget areas. Are they, like I said, asking for too much or too little? Sometimes, avoid the temptation to pad your budget. If you need to put a contingency in, that's okay, right? But because things might change one way or another, and you can include some places say, well, if we don't spend the contingency, then it's going here, that'd be fine. But being able to accurately reflect what you think your expenses are going to be based on your experience and your background research on what things cost is really important. And then does the budget comply with their with what their rules are is really important, not just in specific items, but in format. Now, nice enough, right? My career lifetime has gone through from paper to electronic, and sometimes there are budget forms on the electronic form. That's great. You don't have to worry about whether you're making it look good or not, but always err on looking professional when it comes to your budget. Have your accountant look it over, maybe even help you format it so that it looks like, yeah, you know what you're doing. Because this is as much a marketing opportunity as it is a financial opportunity. You might have all the right numbers, do all the right things, but if it looks disorganized, they're just not going to get into it. They're not going to see it. If you present something in an organized fashion that looks like maybe your accountant reviewed it, or maybe somebody who knew what's going on with numbers took a look at this, you're really better off. One other thing I'll mention is a lot of times people will ask me about overhead, and if you're dealing with, like in the United States, there's with federal or state, sometimes even local government grants, you would have an overhead. So how much is it to pay the janitors and keep on the lights, right? A lot of private funders won't do that. But just know where they are on that so that you don't mistakenly include that or omit it where it could be included. So little tip there. All right. Why are they going to turn you down? Yeah, it isn't clear, correct, or even provided. I mean, so many times folks just don't give a budget, or they give something that's really cursory. No, go give a budget that, like I said, it looks professional, that looks like it should be, like you know what you're doing. It's not within their funding range. It's as bad sometimes to ask for too little as it is for too much. They say that they are funding between 100,000 and 500,000. That's where your budget needs to be. Not 50, not 550, but within that area. And sometimes, especially they see this over time, well, these people always go for the big grant. It's not like you want to get a home run all the time. Sometimes you want to go smaller, and a lot of times they won't fund you, or will fund you with a smaller amount if you are new with them, because they want to test it out. And then they will bring you on for the bigger grants as time goes on. Because remember, they see this as a long-term relationship a lot of times, not just a once and done transaction, not the ATM. Your budget was unrealistic and its estimates were not where they should be. Unless you live someplace or work someplace, if you're in New York City applying to a Nebraska foundation, maybe you can say, hey, our numbers are different than your numbers, right? But pretty much folks know what things cost. So unless you have some really good reason, bring them in within what things cost. total budget doesn't match the benefits. In other words, like somebody implied before, right? They're thinking, well, it's way too expensive, or maybe it's not enough versus what they think they're going to get out of this. This raises something that I think is an ethical dilemma, which is that if you ask for, say, too little money and you discount things, and then you end up bringing money in from other areas to backfill on that, right? Is that appropriate or not? Personally, I don't think it is. That if you are raising additional money to fund a grant that you asked for too little about then there's a problem here, and that you need to stand back, because it's unless you are upfront with the donors who are also supplementing it, you're really not doing what you should be for the other donors. So just keep that in mind, especially if you're trying to discount your way into getting a grant. And then, of course, plain and simple, there are math errors. We all make those mistakes. Check it, have somebody else check it. It's just really important to do. You don't want to get caught up on that. This is, again, a proposal is a lot like a resume. How many times have you seen a resume that has spelling mistakes on it and you throw it out, even though the person could be great? It's the same thing, right? Just keep basic stuff like that. Shouldn't even be an issue. So just make sure you check. Obviously, create a professional looking budget, write a thoughtful narrative that hits those main points. A lot of folks kind of don't do budget narratives well. You want to be able to not get into the weeds with it, but hit the highlights of, this is your opportunity to point out the important parts of your budget that relate to the program. So connect those dots for people. Use realistic figures. We talked about that. Show all your expenses, or make sure you include them someplace if they're amalgamated. We talked about lowballing. Don't pad the numbers. Follow their rules. And the number one thing is, you got to ask yourself, if this was my money, would I be happy with how it's being spent? Because so many times, especially with smaller foundations, you are dealing with people whose money it actually is or was, or people whose family was, that was their money. And so it's important to ask that question: would I be happy with this if I was spending the money this way, if I got this right? All right. So dances with your finances. This is really important, because your total organization is the context in which your grant proposal is being put out there, right? And people, like I say, don't want to throw good money after bad. You want to prove you can handle the money. So even though you might have a home run program and your budget is great, if you're a bigger financial mess, I wouldn't give money to you, because that doesn't tell me that you handle money well. So you really have to prove that here. So they're asking, do they have an accountant? Do they have appropriate financial statements? Some of these things they're going to require as part of that package you send to them, audits or P&Ls or whatever it is, to show that you are financially stable as an organization. Are they stable over time? So it's not just this year, but it's past years. And some foundations, some funders will not fund anybody who has run a deficit in past years. Or if you have, like, honestly, last year is going to be tough for a lot of organizations that way. You want to be able to talk about why you did it, how you did it. You can't just say, oh, it's COVID, right? No, get into a little bit of the details and how you are not going to do that this year, and what your plan is to move out of that. That's really important. And then understanding, that their leaders get it when it comes to financial basics. You don't have to have a CPA as a CEO, but you do have, as your leaders, all the top leaders should have good basic financial understanding about how the organization works in terms of their income, their expenses, the cash flow issues around that, whether, capital expenses and other things. They need to get what good financial management is. That's essential for any leader. Doesn't matter what discipline they came out of. Can you show that in your proposal? Cash flow is huge. And of course, they're asking, is the project too big, right? Is it something that this organization can handle? And you have to ask yourself that. it might be a bitter pill for you to swallow to say, but I mean, what are the ratios? In fact, I didn't look this up. I should, that of the organizations that get the funds to, the proposed amount to their overall budget. You might actually find some interesting trends there. Do you fall into that trend of of these projects being proportionally the same size as other organizations they fund to their budget? So are they getting $100,000 and they are a $10 million organization, that kind of thing. Now, they might turn you down because your financials are just bad shape, right? Doesn't work for them. You've had deficits, you've had other program problems, you lack the resources to perform the project. Remember, the resources aren't just in the budget area that they are, that they're giving, but there might be other things that have to come in terms of, things that are overhead expenses and all that. Are you keeping the lights on, that kind of thing. The organization simply isn't ready. They don't think you're ready for funding because of what they're seeing for financials. You don't see how the applicant will sustain itself as the program is moving along. You're not showing good cash flow, or that the material presented is just disorganized, and they don't think that you understand your finances. And that's really important to be able to portray that. So what do? Well, think like a bank, right? This is essentially, in fact, I had a student in a class not long ago who was a former banker who's now moved into the nonprofit world, who said, oh, well, gosh, this whole proposal process is just like a bank loan process. And he pretty much right on spot, So you got to think like a bank reviewing a loan. Provide the material, audits or reviews or compilations, show financial competence. Highlight the credentials of your people when it comes to finance. Do you have a CFO who is a CPA or has some financial background? What are the qualifications in terms of financial review that your leadership has? Of course, make your budgets available for several years, explain any blips in your finances. And sometimes you just got to wait to apply later when things stabilize and you are in better overall financial shape to be able to show that you can handle the grant. And that's going to be hard sometimes, but sometimes the best strategy is to punt. Okay, they're out of money. It just happens, let's understand this a little better. Now, maybe they have too many proposals. I mean, I've seen this a lot where they want to help everybody. They just got too much. They got to make a decision. Yours was great, but just not quite great in the way they see it. Their legacy commitments. Now, this is important. A legacy commitment is what especially if they do multi-year commitments on, they're going to give you $100,000, $20,000 a year over 5 years or something, right? Then they're saying, gosh, we're paying off all these others. So it looks like they might give out bigger money, but they have commitments that are already out there. So that might take them out of making more grants. That a lot of funders will work on a 5-year rotating average in terms of, or some way of rotating average in terms of their endowment, and to say that they'll take so much money out, but they'll take, 1 year they earn 7%, the next year they earn 2%, and the next year they earn 15%. They'll average those out, and that will, over time, right, those averages as it rolls forward will determine how much you're giving this year. So maybe they've had a bad string of years. You don't know. Typically, because endowments and foundations tend to be, endowment based, although some are like currently funded, will they'll be very market sensitive, and so it will take them a while to dig out of a bear market, for example. Their funders had a bad year, right? Especially if they're current funders, funding types that, the money comes out of a company that puts money into their foundation or something. It's just a bad year. They don't do rolling averages. Or they're asking themselves, well, do these people make the deadline? Making deadlines is a great way for them to be able to take you out so that they don't have to deal with you. And it's terrible to say, But, I have a friend of mine who has a community foundation who says if the deadline is 4 o'clock and they come in at 4:05 with that paperwork, or the FedEx is late or something, too bad. And that just makes she feels that makes her life easier for not having to look at that proposal again. So that's keep that in mind. So Grantmaker will say we had limited funds this year, the market was down, they had other proposals like yours, the application was late, or we might give you less than you requested. Wow, now that happens, and you have to be prepared to say, what are we going to do with this, right? So what you want to do is apply early. Don't always apply for their maximum. Apply for what you need based on the program. Be open to applying again. Now, then back to this, we're only going to give you other, a portion of it. Make as much as you can, look at making your proposal modular when you put it together, because you're going to say, well, if I don't get all the funding, or if they partially fund this, well, I can take parts A, B, and C, put them together, and then take D, E, and F and work for other funding that way. I've even found it actually is kind of interesting, because to me, I've seen the whole funding process go through, and that we finally get turned down entirely. And over the course of the next year, everything's funded, that program is running, because we've now kind of gotten our lives together on this project, and it all crystallized, and folks find other ways, whether it's out of their own budget or smaller funders or other funders, and cobble together the program so it works. And of course, always have other funders in mind. I want you to go for the best organization that meets the requirements, right? But that may not be the only one you go for. There is always a question, do you go for concurrently or not? Yeah, yes, but that might end up, if you're, the problem is the best solution, or the best scenario, which is you get both grants and having to explain that back and forth. But yeah, always have other funders in mind when you're working with anybody in this business. Okay,
Matt, just before we go, I just want to give a sense of time to respect everybody's time as well. We're about 5 minutes from the top of the hour. We're probably going to go over by the current estimates. And so we do have a good backlog of questions. Feel free to send those in, but Matt will also be sharing his contact information at the end in case you want to ask those more detailed questions. But just as a heads up for everybody here right now, we'll probably run over. And if you don't have anything immediately after, Matt, I think it'd be safe to say you'll be available for the next half hour or so. So it'll probably run for the next 35 or so. Just a heads up for everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Will. And I am sorry about that. I just geek out on these things and really want to make sure that, I'm covering this like it should be. So my apologies for going over a bit here. And I also, honestly, I for some reason wasn't seeing the questions. So I scrolled down, now I see. So what is the greatest joy? Let's make this a quick one here. Bragging about how much money they give, funding your program in perpetuity, seeing their funded program stand on their own, or having clients thank them. What do you think? Jump in there, answer that question. Let's see where that goes. And while you're doing that here, yeah, two funders, right, come through the same program. That could be a problem. And so you, again, back to communication, and you want to be able to talk to them about that. Let's see here. So bragging about how much, yeah, a lot of folks do get into that, right? Or funding in perpetuity. Yeah, that's probably not going to be the answer. Seeing the funded program stand on their own is huge. And of course, you always want to thank folks. And it is seeing the funded program stand on their own. That is really important to funders, because they don't want to be tied to you in perpetuity. They want the flexibility of being able to fund other things going on. So if you can present a good way of getting their program, getting your program standing on its own, especially when it comes to money, that's gold. Now, can they see your future? Yeah. And will they become dependent? That's a real issue for them. What are their plans to get funded after we go away, right? These two are related. How do you know if the program is going to be successful, right? Are you dealing with, we talked about outcomes and outputs, right? But being able to get a good evaluation on that is huge. What's the long-term impact of what you're doing? And of course, how will they look after the project is completed? That makes a big difference because, yeah, they want to make an impact, but they also want to look good to the community of whatever that community is. So your ability to show them not just that you're going to put out press releases or whatever, but that you're making a meaningful impact that they can talk about for others. Those bragging rights, that's important to folks. Now, what are they going to, well, they might not do multi-year projects or keep the project going without funding. They don't see evaluation methods. Evaluation is a major issue when it comes to funding these things, funders. And so you need to be able to show that you understand what the evaluation methods are in your field that are appropriate to say whether you're successful. They might think you don't have experience. Again, back to being expert versus well-intended. Or they just don't think you have the staff or the resources to carry out the project. So, let's see here. Yeah, what you can do, be specific on your evaluations, making sure that you have the right way to evaluate what you're doing. There's a whole subfield out there on evaluations. Believe me, there's a professional organization out there on evaluations. So engage somebody to help you with that. Highlight staff competency, yes. Use funding for, let me see here, I'm trying to move my, move a couple panels here so I can read everything. Right, use funding for discrete projects. Right, that's important because you want to be able to say that this project is done, and showing specific plans for future funding is something that is really hard to do, but really important, right up there with evaluation. And sometimes that'll make or break whatever it is you're doing because they want to see what good work they put money into continue. That's in their best interest. So your ability to help them with that is really huge. And then strengthen organizations' revenue generation activity, because maybe you have a good development program that when you take it on your own, you're just going to absorb that in your budget. They want to see that that's going to continue. Okay, writing, right? It's called grant writing for a reason, right? Well, right? I mean, can you make sense of it? The bottom line in these things here is that it doesn't have to be Shakespeare, but it has to be intelligent, good writing that non-experts can understand. And that's very important. So are there strong narratives to support the numbers? Are there good numbers that support the narratives? These things go back and forth, right? Do the graphs and charts make sense in the context of what you're doing? So keep that in mind. From the Grantmaker's point of view, of course, they're asking, is the description clear? Can they follow the narrative? Did you give too much background information and not enough substance? I see this all the time, where you want to give all the background of the organization, and then it comes down to what the substance of the proposal is, and it's small, and you don't want to do that. Yeah, concisely correct grammar. I am a big advocate of the program Grammarly. Use it. It's okay. You're not cheating. Use it. It helps you really come off as being intelligent and good, because maybe your writing isn't the best, but with something like Grammarly, it's going to help. We talked about being expert versus well-intended, and or detailed or not detailed enough. You got to have that nice balance there. And spell check, spell check, spell check. You got to do that. Hire a writer, have it reviewed, right? Grammarly.com. I talked about that. Jargon is toxic. Remember, especially in areas where you're dealing with people who might be intelligent non-experts, de-jargonizing something is really important, and having somebody who is not an expert read it is really good. Cite outside sources. Again, tell folks that, think of this as an academic paper in some respects, that you want to tell people that you know what you're doing. So if you cite outside sources, you show that you have read the literature of whatever the background is there. And that's really huge. Okay, their rules rule. Don't guess. Read the rules, right? Did it get in on time? We talked about that, right? Does it look like they read the guidelines? That's a big thing. What's the application doing if, is it in their format? Now, of course, with nonprofit, with foundations that have online applications, it's easier to do that, right? But making it complete is really big. Go make yourself a checklist. Go down, check all the boxes. Did you give them what they wanted? Have they provided all the supplemental materials? A lot of people leave those out. Contact with board and staff. We're going to talk about that next. And, do they know you? Have you funded them before? Have they funded you before? So let's take a look here. Of course, if it doesn't look like you read their instructions, they're just going to throw that out. If you didn't complete the application, they're going to throw it out. If you provided too much text, you won't be able to add more in there. You don't provide the support materials. You can see this stuff here, right? It's not rocket science. You just got to read. But I think the most important part of this is right down here. Read the instructions before you start, yes, but then reread the instructions before you send it in. In other words, go back and review it again. And this is another place where Instrumentl can be a big help, because they're going to provide you with these instructions. So take advantage of that. Read the instructions and make sure that you are doing the thing that you should be doing in their format. Contact the funder if you have questions, and be aware that they're going to get applications of other folks who know their cycle of grant proposals, and make sure you're on time. Okay, now a lot of folks are concerned about connecting, right? And they're going to be asking themselves, have they heard of you? What they say, another motherism, right, is your reputation precedes you, right? It's important to remember that if they've heard of you, they're going to have an impression of you. This is where broad marketing really makes a difference. Are they going to think well of that impression to start? Have they met anybody on your board? Does my board connect with them, right? And are there conflicts of interest? This is a major point. A lot of organizations I know look for conflicts of interest between their board or their that funder and what they are and that nonprofit in terms of connections or other ways that do they do business with you? Are they volunteering for you? Things like that. You've really got to be cognizant of that. That may not be to your advantage. For example, if one of their board members volunteers for your organization somehow, because that person will be taken out of that decision-making process. So they might have not heard of you. They don't think that you've been around long enough. That's really tough for startup organizations. But in that case, then you focus on the people that you have in the organization, not necessarily the organization's track record, but the people's track record. You contacted board members and they said you shouldn't. Don't do that, right? Again, read the instructions. You didn't make them aware of any anything that are of conflicts. You can be proactive about that. That's really important, to be able to contact somebody at the foundation, say, listen, we think we have this conflict here. I just want to make you aware of it. They will really appreciate it. Or maybe they haven't met your staff, and so they're not so sure about you. They just don't know you. And of course, what can you do? Focus on marketing your organization and highlight your accomplishments. Remember that board members might say, oh, I can do you a favor by contacting people. Wait, try to put that on pause. Or if it does happen inappropriately, connect with the people in the foundation so that you know that it wasn't you. They will appreciate that. You're not trying to work around them, but that you have a rogue board member who decided that they could be helpful or they were new or something. So explain that, have that communication with them. Sometimes a lot of funders want to be contacted. A lot of funders don't want to be contacted. Make sure you understand what that is and work with that. And then, of course, right, let's talk about how Instrumentl can be big part of this? Well, of course, like I said, they have a platform that really pulls all this information together. And I'm a big advocate of getting prepared before you get into it and having data all in one place. And I've been actually very impressed with the Instrumentl platform being able to do this. I know we're over time a bit. I apologize for that. Like I said, I get enthusiastic about these things. Will, anything on your end?
Yeah, I'll show a quick tour of Instrumentl for folks who are interested in learning more about how it connects to what you talked about today. And then we have at least 8 questions or so to get through, so we'll kind of do a lightning round. Obviously, if you have other questions as well, feel free to chat them in. But at a high level, Instrumentl, like Matt mentioned, helps you bring everything around grants to the same place. So grant prospecting, tracking, and management. Historically, grant writers or development teams have relied on a variety of tools in order to do this, but we essentially bring it into a single source of truth. So when you're creating a project on Instrumentl, what you're able to do is you're able to create a custom search based off of your particular programs and initiatives. So earlier we had a Boys and Girls Club. We work with Boys and Girls Clubs who are able to then set up their projects in Instrumentl. And then in the other side of things, we had some STEM education efforts from some attendees and whatnot. And those are all things that are manipulable in your project view as you set things up in Instrumentl. So you'll be able to tell us a little bit more about your organization, where it's based out of, as well as select specifically the county or state that your impact is in, and then followed by selecting some fields of work that are related to the work that you do. And when you do this, what you're able to do is you're then able to isolate for the size of grants you want, as well as the types of funding that you're looking for, so that you can get a curated list of matches, which will be updated every single week. So what we do here is we essentially screen for you active opportunities that your nonprofit can start working for. And like Matt mentioned earlier in the presentation, you can create your Instrumentl account using the link instrumentl.com/NPC. And essentially, when you get these matches, you're then able to quickly sift through and look at more information about the funder. So Matt talked about, for example, the importance of making sure that you're able to actually align a good fit funder and dig into the guidelines. And that is all brought into the same place on Instrumentl. So you can see here for all these opportunities, we're showing you the information like the deadline, we're showing you information like the grant amount, why we're showing it to you, as well as all of the overviews behind the organizations and the eligibility requirements, as well as those 990 reports that are digitized for you. We actually just released an exciting release today related to these foundation pages as well. So if you are using Instrumentl, be sure to check those out. Essentially, now you can actually do deep dives into the foundation views to see the top giving foundations by different cities, states, etc., as well as by the different IRS codes, the NTEE codes. But essentially what you'll see is you'll see a lot of the key information that Matt mentioned is vital. You'll see stuff like the key people, right? And so a quick tip for you in terms of all you Chrome browser users is you can just literally right click a highlight and then just search Google for that and then immediately type in the phrase of that foundation as well. And so you'll get all these trends, you'll get the past grantees as to where funding has actually gone in terms of the money. And then you'll also be able to track down to specifically past recipients of grants from this foundation. And then when you actually save one of these things into what we call the tracker, what's going to end up happening is you're going to get this updated digitized version of the old school spreadsheet that all you grant writers love. But the reason why this tracker is a lot more powerful and Instrumentl is because of a few key features. The first one is every single week, we're going to update for you all the deadlines and all the upcoming tasks that you have coming up. So as you save things into your tracker, you can actually do all of your task management in the same place as well. So maybe we have a meeting on Friday. Meeting Friday with Jeff on this, right? And maybe we have some sort of task and we want to set something up for next week and we want to just choose another person on our team for that, right? You can essentially do a lot of cross-team collaboration asynchronously, which we all know is more and more important in these remote days. And then you'll also be able to upload all of your documents and proposals in the same place. So it gives you a singular source of truth that you essentially can then use for all of your tracking. So you can see here for this opportunity, for example, that I have saved this Franklin P. and Arthur W. Purdue Foundation opportunity 3 different times for the next 3 years. And it's super easy and Instrumentl for me to track against multiple years, as opposed to the historical approach where I might have to do something a little bit more manual. If you're bringing in some sort of existing spreadsheet, all you need to do is click the Add New button when you are setting up your account, and then you can upload many. And from there, you'll be able to upload all of your opportunities from there. If you want to customize your fiscal years, we also support that. And that makes it really nice for you in terms of when it comes to aligning it to whatever your organization is running on. And then if you ever need to look up a particular organization, you can look them up by their EIN number or by their name. And the benefit of doing this is, again, because when you do look up these organizations, you're going to get these detailed overviews, these rich pages that essentially have everything nicely formatted for you that you can then dig into and whatnot. So who do we mostly help? We mostly help US-based 501c3s that have a start in terms of their grant strategy. We don't excel that well in terms of new nonprofits because those nonprofits are typically in an earlier stage in their grant readiness phase. However, if you're looking to scale your grant strategy, what you can do is you can turn to Instrumentl to help you in scaling that. What we find are two key outcomes in which, on average, we find that our customers each save 3 hours a week in terms of their use of Instrumentl, as opposed to doing it all themselves in a different variety of workflows. And then the second thing is, after a year of using us, our customers typically increase their grant application output by 78%. But yeah, I'll pass it back to Matt in terms of going over some learning takeaways. We're going to open it up for some Q&A, go over some raffle things as well, and go from there.
Yeah, I found something very interesting. I forget who you were looking at there, but they were giving money to Block Island Conservancy and Historical Society, which, yes, I happen to know Block Island, but also tells you that these kind of gives you a perspective on that major gift way of looking at somebody. They obviously spend time on Block Island, probably as a vacation. They might have a home there. So there are other things you can get out of this besides just the grant information, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, and to answer your question, Wendy, you can definitely set up an alert to go into your email. All you need to do is, when you are adding an opportunity manually in your tracker, you'll be able to set your deadline, and that will get rolled up into your weekly opportunities that are coming up. So look up your funder, add that deadline for yourself, and then that'll all get rolled up into your existing other opportunities as well. You can also do that for task management. So you can actually come up with, on the topic of creating systems, we always say like Instrumentl can be the backbone to your grant system, because what you can do is you can set up the 5 to 10 tasks that you're always doing in your grant application process to make sure that you dot your I's and cross your T's as well. So what we tell people is, we are like the administrative assistant that your team would love to have, just because what we do is all the grunt work that is typically a little bit more of a strenuous process if you were to do it, individually and whatnot.
Well, and if one of your folks in your board or somebody says, hey, well, just go to the local community college and use the foundation directory, you'll get the same thing. The answer is no. Because this is really going to make you more productive and be able to get more proposals out there and get better funded. So I think, good. I'm not downing I love the foundation directory, but I really see the utility of this tool.
Awesome. Well, Matt, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, we can wrap things up, and then we'll go into some Q&A. I've got some loaded up questions, and I'll be ready to lightning round with you.
Sounds good. So let's see here. Well, we can see that's what you've seen me, what I look like. And here's some follow-up information, but let's go to grant consultant. My client bases older adults to Hispanics and construction mental health clients. Oh, well, that's more for you, Will. I think the answer is yes, though. I think it will help you, because what it's able to do is allow you to parse out what the mission interests are of the organizations. And it looks like you have a few tags there to be able to grab onto there. Will, let's see, did any stand out to you? I'm just going to scroll up and see if I can find folks here.
Yeah, I'll cue you some questions while we have folks here. Let's go over the raffle information, since that'll be important as well.
So what I have is one of the courses that, now if you go to nonprofit.courses, and by the way, that's the URL, it's .courses, like it says here. .courses is a new top level domain like .org and .com. you'll see 5,000 different videos on literally 5,000 on any number of nonprofit things. But what I'm doing here is giving you access to a particular program that I set up a couple of years ago on fundraising basics and the things that you really should know if you're in a nonprofit and working with fundraising. A lot of people like it. It's about an hour, I think, of video plus a lot of supplementary material, which I think you'll get a lot out of. So I don't think just being here puts them in the raffle. Is that correct? Or, oh, enter the raffle here. So
yeah, if you go into the next slide, we'll actually share it on the screen. I can go over it for folks. Pretty much all you need to do is you can start your Instrumentl trial with Matt's link. You can complete the webinar feedback form, which you're going to get after this presentation. That's helpful for us because it allows us to help plan the future topics that you guys want to see. And you can also share on social media, either LinkedIn or Twitter, as to what you learned from today's workshop, and make sure you tag both nonprofit courses and Instrumentl. We'll announce the winner on Friday. You have until the end of day tomorrow to enter. And then if you enjoyed this workshop as well, I wanted to remind everybody that we have another one on the 24th. We're going to be covering how to understand and take advantage of the grant opportunities in the American Rescue Plan Act with Julie Asel. So that'll be at the same time, and you can register on our events calendar. That was a attendee request. And so we're actively listening to your feedback and trying to give you the programming you want. But I'll go ahead and open it up for questions, since I've been tracking throughout the moments, and there's a ton for you, Matt. So to kick things off, Gideon is asking if it is advisable to submit another proposal to the same donor after the first one fails to sail through.
Yeah, assuming that you have met their time requirements. And often they'll say, well, you can't submit something unless, for 6 months, a year, whatever that round is. Yeah, not a problem. In fact, it's important that you do, because now you're building kind of a reputation with them as somebody who's persistent and interested, assuming, of course, that you meet their mission requirements. And I say that because somebody I interviewed for the class I teach said that I think it was off camera, she told me that over the last 10 years or something, she's been with this foundation. Every 6 months, she gets a proposal from somebody who has nothing, this one organization that never has anything to do with what they do. And she thinks it's just a cut and paste that this person puts out, and it really annoys them. So you have to be on target, but as long as you're on target and following the rules of that, go for it. I think that's a great thing to do.
Awesome. Our next question is from Maya. She keeps hearing the saying, ask for funding, get advice, ask for funding, get funding. What kind of advice should we ask? What areas of advice can funders offer? So it sounds like Maya's asking for what are your top questions that you might ask.
That she wants my advice. Yeah, I would look at them, particularly if they are program specialists, if they are seeing any trends maybe in that program, that mission area that you need to be paying attention to. Maybe you have some question, or there's something on their application or in their guidelines that they can give advice to. Like was said, gee, can we put in 2 in a row? If you can get the answer out of the guidelines, don't ask that question. Try to move beyond it, move it up a notch from the guidelines. But I personally would get out of that and go to program stuff and find out, if they've funded programs like yours or other places before, what advice they can give on some aspect of the mission. I think that would really be more engaging to them than simply asking them about applying, because everybody asked about that.
Awesome. The next question is from Lisa. Even if funders say they are willing to pay for overhead, will your application be stronger if you still act as though that they don't need to fund overhead and leave it out of your budget?
I don't know. I think if they're willing to pay for it, and you can legitimately put that in, yeah, go ahead and put it in. Again, you don't want to try to discount your way into it, because into a proposal, because it's just going to bite you back. Because you're going to have financial problems yourself later on trying to keep that program going. So I would take advantage of their generosity that way and go ahead and ask for that overhead. But maybe if you want to delineate it out somehow, or if they somehow draw a circle around it so that if they wanted to pull it out, that's fine. You might also, that could be a question to ask the funder themselves. Say, listen, we've gone both ways on this, and explain what your situation is. If you can afford it and they're okay with it, sure, don't put it in. But no, I would probably err to keep it in.
Cool. Kimberly asks, is there a percentage of budget for the amount that you should put for the contingency?
Some people say 5 or 10%. I think that's fine. It has to be, in fact, actually 10% might be a little high, but it has to be something that you can say, well, if point to say if this risky part fails, or if something in the program might go wrong, that you would make up for that. But yeah, it obviously can't be huge. In the maybe 5-10% range, it would be fine.
Got it. Paula asks, if a funder says the maximum dollars to request are 15K, is it smart to come in at exactly 15K, or should you budget something a little bit below that, for example? For like 14.5.
You should come into what it costs you to do the program. And if that, assuming that it's not going to be at their maximum. If it's going to cost you $14,325, then that's what you put in. Don't try to game this. Make it what you need to do this within the parameters of whatever it is that they're asking.
Lisa asks, what is the best way to explain a planned and board-approved spend down of resources that leads to a few years of deficit for the organization? Is there any hope that funders will understand this?
Yeah, there is. If it looks like it was intentional, if you can show board minutes that show that this wasn't something that you're kind of willy-nilly going out and having an emergency every year or something, and that it has to look systematic, that you are moving forward on something logically and deliberately, not in a panic or accidentally.
Ellen asked, what about the potential for concern that the grant request is insignificant to the organization, specifically a small request, maybe $10,000 for a larger nonprofit?
I assume you mean I'm thinking to the funder, but maybe it means to the nonprofit. So as far as the funder goes, you need to be within their guidelines. If you're asking for less than what they are saying, then don't do that. Come in within their guidelines. If it's insignificant to the nonprofit, take it as a way for them to get to know you better. Of course, I would also go back and look and say, is there a way that is there something else we should be asking for, and take that application to a different organization if it looks like it's going to be problematic.
Brad asked, is it appropriate to send program updates to funders who haven't supported the initiative? For example, foundations who have declined or haven't been approached yet.
Yeah, you might, if they've declined, that's okay. As long as you didn't burn a bridge there or something, and you imagine that you will go forward with this, that's fine. I would be careful for folks who haven't funded you yet. They don't know you're on that they are on your list. You don't want that to be the way they find out. Plus, actually something I didn't throw in the webinar here was, I hear a lot of times that from grant funders, don't send us your updates. They don't want the annual reports. They don't want like your typical flow of paper or emails out. Because they just get too much from everybody else who either wants to get funding or gets funding. So let them set that level of communication.
Awesome. To answer your question, Brandy, recordings will be sent afterwards along with slides and the raffle entry. So keep your eyes peeled on that. We'll be we'll be getting started on that actually in the next few minutes. And so I think that wraps up all the questions for today. Thanks so much for attending, everybody. As a reminder, if you enjoyed the session, please submit your feedback forms. And also, we look forward to seeing you in about 2 weeks from now for our session on ARP, on the ARP funds. And then the other thing I wanted to share is if you have other questions that have come up, we are going to be testing out a new format on the 1st of September. It'll be a grant writer Ask Me Anything section. So if you want to ask 3 different panelists about that, you can also register for that on our events calendar. Be sure to invite your friends if you haven't already. That's pretty much how this thing has grown. And we've seen over 2,500 grant professionals in the last few months just join in for these events. So thanks so much, everybody. And we'll see you guys soon.